St. Patrick's Day 2012. I open my eyes. I'm surrounded by machines. I'm unable to move. There's tubes all around me. I have no idea what day it is, what year it is. A nice nurse looks at me and says, in a few seconds, we're going to pull a tube out of your throat. 3, 2, I sort of gag a little bit. I have no idea what's going on. Have I been out for a month? Have I been out for a few years? An hour later, because she told me not to speak for an hour, but an hour later, my mom walks in and she has tears in her eyes. My aunt has tears in her eyes as well. My dad walks in. He lives in Greece. What is he doing there in the moment? I had no idea. I was full of confusion, and I found out it was St. Patrick's Day. And then I started talking, and when you haven't talked in close to a month, because I was sort of knocked out, I was breathing through a ventilator, you have a very squeaky voice. And with that squeaky voice, I decided to call my buddy up because it was his birthday that day. And that's one of the first things I asked my mom. I said, hey, can you call my friend? Because it's his birthday. I want to wish him a happy birthday. Keep in mind, I have no idea what's going on at this point. So I call him up and he's like, he thought somebody was prank calling him because it wasn't my voice. And he actually hung up the phone on me. And then afterwards, I called him back and I'm like, yo, dude, it's me. Like, I'm awake now. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact words I mentioned. I probably have it written down in my journal somewhere. But yeah, that was the beginning, right? Unable to walk, confused, didn't know what day it was. And it's actually was 3.5 weeks after I walked in the hospital. I walked in on February 25th. It was March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, as I mentioned earlier in the video. And I'm just taking a pause to take it in. It's like, one day you're normal, one day you're living your life, you're out with your friends, you're working, you're chasing your dreams, you're dating, you're doing this thing, and then the next thing you know, you're waking up in a hospital bed, not knowing what day it is, unable to walk, unable to move, unable to go to the toilet alone. I was actually, defecating and peeing in the tube at the time. Eating as well, I'm shaking trying to feed myself. And when you're in the ICU for that long breathing through a tube, you don't eat regular food, right? I hadn't consumed the actual food in about 3.5 weeks. So the first meal I ate was pureed chicken, pureed green peas, pureed, I don't know what it was, but it was actually one of the best meals I ever had because I hadn't eaten for so long that it felt really good. And same thing for liquid. At first, they don't give you a glass of water when you're thirsty, right? Because you haven't swallowed in so long. They give you a little stick with a little pink sponge at the tip that they dip in water, and then you can suck on that, and eventually ice cubes. And then eventually, I got to food once I was able to eat. And luckily for me, I like food. I had a pretty big appetite. And then from there, I had to relearn how to walk. Like I said, I couldn't get up, couldn't go to the bathroom myself. Had to go through some physiotherapy. Essentially, the exercise started first in bed. Then I was able to, lift my arms, lift my legs, then sit up and then do other exercises from there. And then after exercises were outside of the bed, which was dangerous because my balance was off. And then just learning, rebuilding my body with walking and then learning how to go up the stairs. And even when I went up the stairs, it felt like my legs weighed a ton each leg. 20 years old at the time, unable to wipe my own butt, unable to go to the bathroom, unable to wash myself, and I have a lot of different anecdotes of things that happened at the time. And like I mentioned in the previous video, I had a landscaping and cleaning business, and my buddy came in and we had a conversation and we came to the conclusion that, we couldn't pursue these companies together because I was in a complete different place than he was. So he went off and did something else with somebody else, similar line of business. The music studio at the time we had me and some buddies of mine at my mom's house. We dismantled that. I had just released a music CD a month before, and I was selling it through Facebook, through friends, family. I had done an event as well. And that was torn down. Some of my best friends, people that I was seeing every day before I got hospitalized, came once to see me. At the beginning, I had lost 20 pounds of muscle in the ICU. And then I regained 60 pounds after that. I have like stretch marks all over my body, on my stomach as well. I don't know if you can really see them. I don't want to move too much to mess up the video, but anyways, stretch marks all over my body. Gained 60 pounds. I was a college dropout. Closed all my businesses. I started developing something called moon face. When you take the pills I was taking, corticosteroids, your face swells up. When I looked in the mirror, I couldn't see myself, to be honest with you. I saw a different version of me that I didn't recognize. I always, thought that, not always, but I always had a sense of self, of who I was, of where I was going. I never doubted anything. And then going through this and really, being in a vulnerable position, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, socially, I didn't feel like dating. I gained 60 pounds. I could hardly breathe well. I had to rehabilitate my lungs as well. I couldn't really start a business, couldn't really do much, to be honest with you. I could barely go up the stairs, barely get dressed at the time. People that I know my whole life saw me out in public and even recognized me because I'd gained so much weight. Sorry about that. So the thing is that, there has to be a shift that takes place. You can either be the boat on the river or a piece of driftwood that's just drifting along. And I stopped asking myself if I could get back to a norm, like to my normal, and I have to shift my mind into building who I wanted to be, figuring out what I really wanted to be like, right? And figuring out what I can do today. One of my friends told me when I was rehabilitating that I need to take it baby steps, one step at a time. I wanted to run, I wanted to get back to normal, but the reality was is that I probably wasn't going to get back to a normal state for the longest time. And even a decade later, I'm still working on myself, and I feel like I'm still a work in progress that's never gonna be finished. And even though, when I was rehabilitating, I was being told take 5 steps forward and I would take seven, go up 4 stairs, I would go up six, do your exercises in the morning with support. I would do them alone. I would get up out of bed and just bang out my exercises that they gave me. And you just gotta just keep moving forward and keeping your focus on the next step forward and not look at the big picture every day. So I think it was healthy for me to be in a position where I had aspirations in such a way to find a normal, whatever that was, but also realizing that it was going to take time, and I had a very hard time accepting that as well. And I'm a little, skating here, trying to show some emotion that I had at the time. And it's very conflicting, right? Because on one side, you're happy that you survived. You're happy that, you overcame something very complex and very difficult that could have almost took your life. But then on the other side, you're like, what the happened to my life, man? I used to be this guy that was go out and about with his friends, had some little businesses. I was dating. I was having an awesome time. I was smoking, drinking, living like the young life. And then next thing you know, I can't do nothing. My friends are all partying, throwing parties, having fun, enjoying themselves. And I'm at home watching TV with my mom, eating a salad, trying to be healthy. And there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, fast forward almost 14 years since that point, there's people that are still where they were back in the day, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying, like, because I shifted gears into a growth mindset as opposed to a closed mindset. Sorry, a fixed mindset. That's a concept in I think it was Carol Dweck or something wrote in a book, Growth Fixed. I didn't have a word for it at the time, but I'm somebody that really strives in moving forward and creating momentum for himself. And I feel like having that mindset of like, okay, I'm here today, and I have the capacity to change where I'm at in order to go into another version of myself, right? Sort of killing the version of the illness, not killing the version of the illness, but killing the version of myself that was, wishing for faster back to normal, when in reality I needed to take my time and to, build one brick at a time, one move at a time to get back to a new normal that I built to today. And even today, I'm still focusing on what I want. It's never the finish race is never enough. And I just realized I forgot to put my wedding ring on. I just came back from the gym this morning. But yeah, the tan lines don't lie. Um, so yeah, I think that you have to. I had to appreciate where I was and be content. And I think it's a fine balance of being happy and wanting more, because I feel like it's easy in the position of illness to be, to victimize yourself and be like, oh, this happened to me. Why did this happen to me? It's not my fault. I could just stay where I'm at, and it's okay, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's really nothing wrong with that at all. But you got to realize, and I had to realize, that there is no going back to the normal, and that's okay, because it's like a fresh page. It's like a blank slate. It's like, a new book that you get to write anew, of how you want it to be written. And no, it's not perfect. You have to deal with some anxiety. You have to deal with some stress. You have to deal with fear of potentially the illness coming back. You have to deal with the fact that maybe you'll develop another illness. Like, all these fears are things that are real, and you're allowed to feel all these things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't. But I feel like it's so much easier when you start creating momentum in your life and taking action. And it's not a weakness. I think it's the most courageous thing we can do, is that, we accept what we've been through and realize that you got power, and you're strong, and you're resilient, and you've been through so much, and that you have faced something that not many people have faced in life, and that's death. Not just physical death, but death of self, right? The death of oneself. And that's something that I think is the most hard out of all this. Is, yes, you live physically, but part of you probably still, part of myself was still stuck in that hospital bed. And I say you because I don't know who's listening, who's watching, but anyways, enough babbling on my side. So thanks so much for watching the video. And I'm curious to know, like, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comments. And if you're still fighting instead of accepting, where are you right now in your journey? And just know you're not alone in this. There's other people that have gone through what you're going through right now. I'm one of them, if you've been through Goodpasture Syndrome. And that's it. So hopefully this video shed some light on some things. Maybe it was entertaining. I'd love to hear about it. Take care.